All right, if you're new to fly fishing, if you're considering getting into fly fishing, you might have heard that fly fishing is confusing or intimidating. There's a lot of speed bumps maybe in between you getting into fly fishing. But the fact is, as it relates to actual fishing, there's not much difference between fly fishing and the other forms of fishing you might call spin fishing or bait fishing. Fish are fish. They put lures and food in their mouths all the time. So don't worry about fishing as it relates to fly fishing. But the defining attribute of fly fishing, that's where things get different. It's a fly cast. It's the unique way we deliver our lure called a fly. In my hand, I'm holding a puff of yarn tied to a leader. It's just a puff of yarn, no hook. It's not a real fly. But the reality is, it's about the same weight or mass of a common trout fly. If this was a trout fly and you attached it to your spinning rod, guess what? Nothing's going to happen. There's not enough mass in the fly to carry the fishing line on a spinning outfit. So this is where things get a bit different in fly fishing. If I go up my leader a little bit, and that's just a clear piece of monofilament, what I'm holding now is fly line. And that's very different from fishing line because it actually does have weight. You can have weight and it still floats. This is a floating fly line. But the main point here is this has mass. So something interesting to consider, there really is no fly casting, yet we call it that. The secret is fly line casting. And I'm going to show you 3 principles that should make fly line casting, or fly casting, simple, easy, and fun. And the first thing to show you is this. I'm going to attempt to cast fly line without using a fly rod. So obviously I have to be very, very efficient at doing this. And I'll show you a trick. If I get my weighted fly line away from me, the first thing I'll tell you is this. You can't push rope. It won't work. But maybe we can pull rope. With the line in my hand, if I pull it in the direction I want it to go, watch what'll happen. By pulling the line, I get the mass moving, and once the mass is moving, anything connected to it, the leader and the fly, goes along for the ride. Let's do it the other way so you can get a look at it here. Principle number 1, by the way, as best as you can, is to remove the majority of slack in your fly line before you attempt to pull it in the direction you want it to go. It doesn't have to be laser straight, but try to get spaghetti piles out of it before you attempt to pull it in the direction you want it to go. Again, with my hands, I'm simply going to pull the fly line, and I'm going to accelerate the pull. 1, 2, 3. The mass goes for a ride. The leader is connected. The fly follows. Believe it or not, you can actually make a fly cast without a fly rod and catch a fish. We've done it. I'm going to turn the other direction so you can get another look at it. Maybe this way it's better. Straight line, no slack, accelerated pull. Off the line goes. There's my fly at the end. It worked that way. It works this way, and back and forth. I'm going to get rid of this now and pick up something a bit different. This is a fly rod. As it relates to moving the fly line and telling the fly line what I want it to do, let's not call it a fly rod, let's call it an amplifier. It makes moving that fly line a heck of a lot easier, and think about it this way. This has mass. If I'm pulling the mass using the rod will begin to bend. It flexes, and in this bend, it begins to store energy. That's how it amplifies. So, principle number 1, let's straighten out our line before we attempt to pull it. Principle number 2, while pulling the line using the rod, we're going to put energy in the rod. Principle number 3 is really easy to figure out, at least in your head. A little hard to do, and I'll explain. Principle number 3 is this. When you have a flexed rod storing energy, at some point during your pull, you must stop the rod's journey so that flexed energy kicks out of the rod and goes back into the fly line, and off it goes. You actually must stop during your pull. You're probably going, okay, that makes sense. It's hard to do for most people though, because if you've ever swung a baseball bat or a tennis racket or even a golf club, that all has follow through. But let me put these principles together so you can take a look. We'll use the rod. Principle number 1, and we're just going to lay it on the grass so everyone can see. We don't have to keep it in the air yet. Straight line, we've removed slack. Principle number 2 is we are going to accelerate the pull using the rod. And the final bit during that pull is we are going to stop the rod. Here comes the pull. There's the stop. You can see the energy roll down the fly line, kick over the leader, and deliver the near weightless lure we call a fly. If it worked that way, guess what? An accelerated pull with a stop, it'll work that way too. Now, as you practice your smooth accelerated pulls and stops, and you get a bit better at keeping your line going where you want it, you can add a pause after each stop and keep the line in the air. The point being is, if you use the principles, there's only 3, straighten out the line, pull the line using the rod, and stop the rod during the pull, you'll be a very efficient caster. By the way, efficiency is the goal. Why would you want to work any harder than you have to? Enjoy the cast. And as far as distance, don't worry about that. If you're fishing for trout or panfish, which you should be when you start, a 30-foot cast, a 40-foot cast, you're right in the wheelhouse. You'll probably catch 90% of the fish out there. So practice your pulls and stops, and pulls and stops, and you'll have a buttery smooth casting stroke, and you can put your fly where you want it. You can celebrate the cast. You can enjoy fly fishing. It's easy. Get started fly fishing.